Good morning. Welcome to the CSLDallas Science Mind class. I'm Dr. Petra, and we're carrying on with our chapter on Mind, the Greatest Discovery. And we are in finishing up mental laws. And so I just want to look at this last paragraph or two in this chapter on mental laws, because it really harks back to the conversation we had the last 2 weeks, and some of the kind of surprising thing about this idea. So this is the first full paragraph on page 79, if you're following along. The conscious volition in the universe. So volition is a word that we don't use today, is very, very, very popular word in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And it really basically means conscious choice. Not just choice, because we also make unconscious choices, but it really means intentional conscious choice. So volition is a little more than just choice. It's the ability to make choices and then acting and then actually making choices. Okay, so volition kind of means all of that. The conscious volition in the universe is what is meant by the spirit or God. The mental medium, the universal subjectivity, the law, is the doer of the word, right? Because we understand that it's the word or the movement in consciousness that is the intention, that is the decision or choice. And then it's the law that is the doer, the law that is the maker of things happening. Plotinus speaks of the doer, but not a knower. He calls it a blind force, knowing, only doing. And so this is why we understand how important it is that we pay attention to the choices that we make. Because there is this universal mental medium. And we could translate mental medium into collective unconscious. We could translate it into the subjectivity. We could translate it into the quantum field, right? It's that unconscious consciousness. Whereas volition is conscious consciousness, right? So unconscious consciousness is, there's clearly consciousness, there's intelligence, there's ability, there's knowing, but not self-knowing is the difference, because you need a self-knowing to be able to have an intention or make a choice. And so this idea of and we talked about this before, right? Universal spirit, and then this universal medium or universal law. And they have a very different flavor to them. They have a very different reality. And so while spirit intends for life to flow through us, the law doesn't care. You want to do something that is not life-affirming, the law just says yes. You want to do something that is not for your highest and best good, or the highest and best good of those people around us, the law just says yes. Now, it takes a little more effort on our part to be hateful, angry, grasping, taking. It takes a little more effort. But the law itself is not going to say no. And spirit simply wants to express. It also has no opinion about particularly how we express. And so we are really going to focus in on that in the next little while, because we have to grapple with the idea that we have free will. And that we are engaging with the universal spirit as us, and the universal mental medium or law moving as us in the world. And how that works for us. Now, I love this next paragraph. Ernest Holmes is constantly trying to get us to wake up out of unconscious beliefs. Childhood beliefs, familial beliefs, cultural beliefs that we just accept as true because, well, that's just all we've ever heard or all we've ever seen, or we've never actually inquired into it. So this is the principle which we use in practice. The principle being the universal mental medium, the universal law of cause and effect. Lots of different words for it. This is the principle which we use in practice. We use it. We direct it, consciously or unconsciously. We should distinguish between the conscious volitionist spirit and the subjective law, which works with intelligence but not self-conscious awareness. Okay, when this is realized, we shall no longer be superstitious about our use of the law. We should no longer be superstitious about our use of the law. And what he's pointing to here is the belief that many of us have grown up in, and that has been true is certainly in the West, in the Western religious traditions, that for life to work out, we have to please God. We have to hear God's plan. We have to make sure we're good according to the rules of the religion or the culture in which we live in, or God is going to punish us. And there's religious texts around all of that, but no actual scientific evidence that these things are true. And so we believe them without any kind of evidence that it's necessarily true. And so Ernest Holmes calls that superstition. And we can, in New Thought and in Science Mind, we can get a little superstitious too. Oh my God, I did an affirmation and I put the word not in it. Oh my God, I had a negative thought, right? And we can be just as superstitious because we don't understand that we are using a law. So, yes, if you put electricity in your walls and you put in a light and you cross the wires, it's going to spark, potentially be hazardous, but not because you are a bad person or did anything wrong or somehow electricity is mad at you. Right? I mean, it's a nonsense. It's complete nonsense. And you look at it, and if we have worked on our emotional maturity, we don't say to ourselves, well, that was stupid. I can't believe you did that. You're so stupid. You just really don't know how to do anything. Right? Emotional maturity goes, oh, oops, I didn't do that correctly. Let me fix it. That's it. Let me fix it. And immediately the electricity behaves properly. Do you see? Over and over and over and over again, the science of mind is pressing upon the science part of using the law. And it's not about, oh, I'm meditating all the time, so the universe is going to grant my request. That is superstition. Do you see? I meditate so that I can have clarity, so that I use the law appropriately for good for myself and others, so that I am not flustered when, the inevitable bumps on the road come. I have tools that I can rely on, and I have a sense that Spirit is actually seeking to express life through me, regardless of the circumstances or situation that I find myself in. So, when it has been difficult to get away from such a superstitious reaction because of a theological rather than a scientific approach to the subject. So you may notice over time that we have begun to stop using the word God. Partly because every time we use the word God, we are instantly thrown into a theological idea about what we're talking about. And most of us, not having grown up in the East, we have a deity God in mind, and we have deep cultural and cellular memory of what that is and what that means. And to move into a scientific understanding or a scientific approach to spirituality, we actually have to get out from underneath the superstition. And one of the ways that we do that is to become very, very, very clear about the words that we use. Because the words that we use have an unconscious description or image attached to them. So we want to not have a theological, but rather a scientific approach to the science of mind. And for some people, this is really weird. It feels cold and it feels weird. And how do I know that I want to feel the love of Spirit and I want to feel the impress? And quite frankly, I want Spirit to just tell me what to do. Lay it on me. Well, yeah, other than life full on, the law is just going to take whatever's playing back here, because we're not giving it new direction, new instructions, new idea, new images about it. And so the law we are discussing is simply a law of nature, a force of nature. It happens to be a mental force and an intelligent and creative one, like electricity, which will either light our house and cook our food or will electrocute us if we use it incorrectly. But the electricity is only going to go where we put the lines, where we put the light, where we put the switch, where we put the plug, right? Electricity is ubiquitous and it works everywhere the same for anybody in any situation. Doesn't matter who you are, where you are, what you're building with it. But somebody is deciding how that all is constructed. And that's us. We are using the law. Now, we will also get to that at some point the law uses us. That's also, we're part of the demonstration, right? We have to become, we have to do our work, we have to let go of the old ideas, we have to stop being afraid, we have to feel the nudge and talk to that person, send out that letter, right? Do the thing, usually the thing we're most afraid of doing, which is pushing us out of our comfort zone, right? So that's the law using us. And we say it incorrectly when we say Spirit is doing that. No, Spirit is always present as your ultimate aliveness and the access we have to joy and love and peace and all of that good. But how that is shaped in our particular life, that's up to us. Because now we're using the law, and then, as I said, then we're inviting it to use us, right? We spent the whole last month talking about being and doing, be, do, right? That's the dance, choosing and then allowing. But it's not Spirit we're allowing. Spirit's already present all the time. What we're allowing is the law to use us as intelligently as it uses everything else to bring the next manifestation, the next intention, the next reality into our lives. So this not using it with superstition is so critical. And it's why I have sometimes have people ask me, why, if that person is such an unethical person, why are they so wealthy? Does anybody know the answer to that question?
It's their intention. No law can work for them.
Exactly, because that's what they focus on, making money. And you focus on it, and the law says okay. Now, does that guarantee them happiness? No. Does it guarantee them satisfaction? Maybe not. Does it guarantee them great relationships? But it's not a reward. Having happiness and joy has to be part of what we focus on to have a fulfilling life, right? To have a fulfilling life and to listen to the impress of Spirit, but be willing to choose as that impress is moving and directing the law. And so this again is, we want to get out of this superstition. And then we see people for whom things always work out, right? It always works out. How is that possible? Because they believe it always works out. And even though it's surprising and it looks like there's miracles, it's not because God has said, this is a nice person and I'm going to make sure everything works out for them. It's that mental mindset overarchingly that says, no matter what, it always works out. No matter what, we're going to find our way through. And the law says, oh, no matter what, it always works out. No matter what, you're going to find your way through. No matter what the ins and outs and ups and downs, which are inevitably part of life, right? And that is as powerful a use of the law as I'm now going to manifest this thing. Do you see? We're actually manifesting when we're doing that. We confuse manifestation with something in particular. But manifestation is our whole life. And every aspect of our life, every area of our life, our contribution to the world, our contribution to collective consciousness, to seeing some of the craziness that's going on around us being healed or shifted or changed. So the use of the law can be as deliberate as I am simply going to teach myself to believe that things actually work out. And then I'm going to look for the evidence that that's true. I've got to look for evidence in my past, in my present situation, and I'm going to look for evidence with, as Troward says, cheerful expectancy in my future. That is as powerful a use of the law as what? I want a car, I want a house, whatever we want to specifically manifest. And we confuse manifestation and we say, oh, I don't need to manifest anything. I'm just going to, let Spirit. No. No. Spirit is already, right? And so our conscious work with the law encompasses all of it, from very specific to very general lifestyle expectations that we have. Cheerful expectation that good works out. All right, we're going to stop right there and see, what does this stir up in you? And so we're going to say hello to Ryan, see what's going on. What does this stir up in you?
Well, good morning to you, Dr. Petra, and
Good
thank
morning.
you for joining us today. For everybody here in the room, hello. I'm Ryan. I have this beautiful black curtain in front of me. We had a wonderful event, and this same space that you're looking at today was the dance floor.
That's right.
So some stuff is still up from that. But yes, so this is an engaging conversation, and we'd love to hear from you. And for the folks here in the room, you can simply raise your hand, and Richard will help by bringing over a microphone. Oh, I forgot his title. The iconic Richard. Yeah, can't forget that. And for those who are joining us on Zoom, welcome. We love that you are here to join us today. And you can participate by hitting the raise your hand icon located down below under the reactions or more tab, and or put your questions in the chat and I can bring that into the room. And hello all over the globe to the folks who are joining us on Facebook Live. See a lot of you folks, and good evening to you as well on the other side of the planet there. And you can join us by putting your questions or comments inside of the chat, and I can bring that into the room as well. And I do like to remind everybody that I keep those anonymous so that way we can continue to have a safe container for spiritual growth. Yes. So I see we have somebody here in the audience. If you'd like, just say your name and go ahead and ask your question.
Hello, I'm Jerry, and
Jerry.
This year has struck a chord with me because, let's say, out of all my values in life, my top one is prudence, which means to not waste. But then, if you combine that with, I would have this thought that well, if I get the nicer version of something, the version I'd like to have, well, that would cause me to experience poverty when I retire. And I noticed it, after I started studying this philosophy, and I'm learning more and more what a creative thought that is, So when I do buy the nicer version of something, right, I wind up not fully enjoying it because I'm like, oh, the consequences of this are going to be what I don't like. So I'm glad to, to explore more of this and be more enabled to change the affirmation that I have about it.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. You are not the only person by any means who has this challenge. So I will tell you, well, I don't know what I'm going to say. This is a woman's way of looking at that, but it might be helpful. I struggled a lot about that when I was much younger with buying clothes, because my mother sewed all of our clothes when we were little, because we didn't have the money to do anything else. She sewed all of our clothes. She sewed all of her own clothes, and looked like $1 million out of Vogue magazine. But everything was handmade. And so there was that whole conversation, can we afford it, can we afford it, can we afford it? And I had a friend when I first got into the science mind in my early 20s, and she said, no, you can't look at it that way. If you buy cheap stuff, next year you're gonna have to buy cheap stuff again. So she taught me cost per wear. If you buy a really expensive pair of shoes that are made well, that are a little bit more than you would normally want to pay, those shoes, they're going to last you 5 times longer than those cheap things you've been buying. And so I own clothes that they're now paying me to wear. Right? I have so much exceeded cost per wear. And see, it's the fallacy of our thinking. And it's all the ways in which we turn it around. Things that are a little bit more expensive, maybe a little nicer, they last a little longer, which means that actually at retirement you're actually going to have more because you don't have to keep replacing the things, right? And so, I had to shift the whole piece of it, not just how much am I paying for this one particular thing. Right? And that's what it means. That's what I'm talking about, that the law, yes, we can focus on very specifics, but that's like a lifestyle belief that we have to create, an entirely different way of looking at these things and looking at them without fear, but with creativity. As I'm thoughtful about my purchases, my retirement is assured, right? Is a completely different thought, isn't it? And I think that we often, so I completely out myself about this, right? I have a whole set of paints that I've been playing with on and off over the last few years. I have a whole set of paints. And do you know why I don't paint? Oh, God, I can't believe I'm going to say this out loud. I don't paint because I don't want to use up the paints, because then I don't have them and I have to buy more. Is that just the stupidest thing you've ever heard?
No, but it's pretty stupid.
But I have been confronting that belief over the last year and a half, when I all of a sudden discovered that one of the reasons I wasn't painting was because of a lack mentality around the freaking paints and my inability to buy another bottle of paint. Okay, really? I'm buying cheap paint from Walmart and, Michael's. I'm not buying studio paint. I'm not a studio artist, not like what we have up here. I'm just playing. And it's insidious. These little ideas that we have, they're insidious, and we want to confront them and say, no, this is not how the universe works. This has nothing to do with what Spirit wants for me. This has to do with how the universe works and the choices and the beliefs that I have about it, right? No superstition. There's no superstition in all of this. And we get to then start proving to ourselves, if I make different decisions and move in a different way, thoughtfully with consciousness, we will have a different outcome. All right, I saw your hand, Ryan.
Yes. Oh, and by the way, I'm having a class this weekend
and I
on
can't
the
go.
art within, and it's going to be on Saturday if anybody wants to use up some paint.
And it's going to be awesome. I heard fabulous things about the last one you did, and I really plan to be there this time. But
Yeah. But those paints are still on the shelf.
yes,
We'll
I
use them at some
know.
point.
Oh.
We did have somebody here in the audience.
Oh, and then we have another one up front here too.
Okay, awesome.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'm Carmen, and Peter, what came to mind?
Can you hold your microphone? Just it's really for the people
Yes.
online so they can hear you.
So what came to my mind is a discussion that we had earlier this week. I'm gonna get to that in a minute, but I wanted to say that I do. This is the reason why I come to CSL, because things that are brought up here resonates with me so much, and I understand, why things happen the way that they did. When I went to school, I was a single mom with 4 kids, and I had a vision to go back to school, and I got accepted at Fresno State, but I had someone. I didn't have. The day I got accepted, the day I decided to move to Fresno, my car broke down, and I had 4 kids. I was actually homeless, and I got a U-Haul. Someone helped me pack the stuff that I could take with me to Fresno. I didn't know how I was going to make it. I didn't know how I was going to get that stuff in my apartment that I had waiting for me in Fresno. But when I got there, when I made up in my mind that I had the end result of me crossing that stage at Fresno State, I didn't see nothing in between. I just seen that end result. And that's all that I kept. When something came up like, how was I going to make it, I seen that vision in my head that I was going to cross that stage. And when I got there, people out of nowhere helped me. Yes. Put my furniture up. I had someone guide me to services that was able to assist me out of nowhere, and I was like 2 hours away from my hometown, so I had no clue, and a single mom with 4 kids attending Fresno State for the first time, and didn't know how to register just the whole thing. But I wanted to say is that I asked myself, how was I able to do that in 4 years? I didn't waste no time. I graduated exactly 4 years with my bachelor's degree in social work. And I was like, what did I do to, reflecting on my other other things that I don't have muscle in. And so, but at that time, I was, like you said, Petra, I was going to church and I fell off. I felt like I did something wrong. And I was like, God had provided me all this, and God did this for me and did that for me. And I stopped going to church, and that's where I kind of sort of even felt more unworthy and undeserving, and I didn't go to church. I didn't do anything, and I lived a life like that for a long time after I graduated. And so now, me and you had a talk recently about how I was, and I appreciate you for correcting me, but how I was
Reframing.
Yes, and how how I was still speaking out to this God, the Spirit, and how you explained it to me. And I remember how my old belief is that that's what we would speak outside of the outside source, and that's not true.
Right.
And so now I that opened up something like I was like wow. So anyways,
Beautiful.
I wanted to say this, and I'll pass the mic. But so I had clarity, like you said, meditation for clarity. I had clarity on my question. We always have questions about relationships that we have with people, and I had clarity on how, when you're going to school, you have the syllabus, you know what to expect, you know what to do, and when you have that end result, when you have that vision, or however you get your clarity, that's the same thing you do with yourself. You have to be consistent. You have to know that end result. And when life happens, you step over with that
Right.
vision, that that this is what I set my attention on, and this is what's going to happen. So you don't focus on that. So that's something I just got clarity on.
Beautiful.
With trying to, my relationships with people, with with people is that whatever I have that end result, regardless of what I see, what comes my way, that I know what my end result is.
Yes.
And don't really dwell or focus on so much of the of life experience happens. Just keep going
Beautiful.
like I did with mine. Okay.
Yes, and that is a brilliant example, right? That's a brilliant example. The end result, I am going to cross that stage, period. End of sentence. So it wasn't Spirit who took pity on you and said, oh, let me help you, right? Your intention drew to you all that was the law saying, oh, okay, well, you need this and you need this and you need this and wake up about that, whatever it is, right? And then, and that's how that works. And then, yes, we can forget. So it's really important to find something in your life where you have, in fact, had that experience. And right, that's the evidence, right? This is a science. That's the evidence that you have already done this before. And you can use that over and over and over again to remember how to do it now. Thank you. Yeah. So we have somebody online, and then we have one more in the room.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw this question out
Okay.
here, and then we can come back to you here in the room. The question asks, I have experienced poverty all of my life, throughout my childhood, all the way until now, as a 49-year-old single woman with 2 teenagers.
Yeah.
Will you please offer specific examples of healing consciousness for this? Thank you.
Oh, it's a great question. So when I was a single parent and I had run away from home when I was 15, and I was a single parent with a year-old, and I called my mother up at 32 and said, I need to come home, I need help. And that was by itself a big, massive thing to move back in with my mother and my stepfather. And then I was on food stamps for the first 2.5 years. I was on food stamps. I was work study at school. I went back to school. Yeah. You know, it's so hard to explain how important it is to recognize that the experiences that we're having are not the truth of our being, and they're not the truth of life. And so I worked that entire time not to believe that all I was worthy of was a life on food stamps. That because I had sunk to a life on food stamps, which is clearly how it was presented to me by my family, that was not the truth. That was not the reality of me. And so, like Carmen talked about, I focused on really my sole focus was a life that would support me and my son. That was my focus. A life that would support me and my son. Whatever that looked like, but support, not get by, not survive, support a life of me and my son. And 4 or 5 years it took to really begin to crawl out of that hole. Now, I also heard you say poverty your whole life. So then I started crawling out of the hole. And I started having a little more, like we could get our own apartment and do all that stuff. And then I realized that I would reach a certain level of feeling like, okay, I could maybe buy a new pair of shoes, or I could do something. I could take Jason out on an outing with a little, it's not quite so tight. And all of a sudden, whoom. And then, whoom. And then, whoom. Okay, no, that's not okay with me. And I had to do some deep and serious soul searching. And I realized that my level of prosperity was capped by my mother's belief that it is more spiritual to not be well, I won't even say wealthy, that it's more spiritual to always be a little bit unfocused on your prosperity, and that there's only so much good you can have. Okay, so the example for me about that is that I started working in the ministry, which is a 60 to 80 hour a week job. I had a child, and I decided that I was no longer going to spend time cleaning my house because I worked all the time. And when I didn't work, I wanted to be with my son. And so I worked and worked and worked in my consciousness to make it okay to have somebody come clean my house. And I was so excited that I felt like I could do that. And I told my mother, oh my God, I've gotten somebody to clean the house. I feel like I can breathe. I feel like I can take some time to be with Jason and not feel like, oh, this and this and this. And she said, oh. Oh. You have somebody cleaning your house? Right then and there, I crumbled. And I felt bad. I felt bad for my own prosperity. I felt bad for my own choices. And it infuriated me. It took me another few years to own that my prosperity could be more than my mother's. If you grew up in poverty, that is a cellular memory, and it is a mental equivalent of what you can have or not have. I had to work and work and work and work to grow my expectancy that it would actually work out better, different, and that it wasn't an indictment of my mother. I wasn't taking anything from her. I wasn't dissing my childhood. I wasn't dissing her in her current belief about how it was. And so that really profound spiritual work, and I love Carmen's example. 4 years of disciplined intentionality. I am going to cross that stage, period, end of sentence, right? And so for us, for you, out of that place, I am moving my life out of poverty. I am no longer in poverty. And we see, this is the thing we're trying to get across. Our job is the what. You don't know how to do that right now. I've got these kids and I don't know my job and I don't make enough money and la 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 la. All of that is the how. That is the law's job. That's not our job. Carmen, when she moved to Fresno, did not know how she was going to walk across that stage. Do you see? That's the discipline. And we get all involved in the doingness of it, and now it didn't work out. Oh, the door closed. Oh, I'm never going to get there. No, the door closed. Okay, there's a boulder. Trust the law. Trust the law. Trust the law. You turn on the light switch. You expect the light to come on. Trust the law. Not superstitiously trusting God out there who is going to take pity on you or favor you. Trust the law. But it's a diligent, disciplined effort to stay focused on that end result. That's our spiritual work. That's why we take classes. That's why we come here. That's why we hang around with people who are positive, like-minded, who are willing to pick us up and who are willing to remind us, man, I get it's a rough patch. It's going to work out. The universe is on your side. The universe is on your side. It will support anything you choose. You have to work for it. And how do you work for it? In consciousness. You work for it in consciousness. And then the doing, right? You're part of the law's answer to that. The doing unfolds. But you have to work for it in consciousness. And that means the hard work of staying disciplined to the end result, despite the door closing or the boulder or the false turn or anything else. It's a great question. I hope that's helpful. And I cannot be more serious that this is how this works. All right, we have a comment out here or a question.
My name is Ross. And recently, sitting in this very seat, my very favorite, superstitions went away. They were very comfortable. And where it left me with this, it left me with there's no one out there taking care of me.
know,
like a
doesn't that
higher
just
self,
suck?
and giving me this great guidance and structuring these things in my life. And where this has left me with is, I feel afraid all the time. What I know is I've got responsibility for everything,
Yeah.
as opposed it was being taken care of by some other entity.
Right.
And it's really uncomfortable.
Yes. And thanks for saying that. It is. Because we're asked to be grown-ups.
I choose, I have to choose yes, because there's no other choice.
Right. And, you know, so here's the deal. One of the most difficult initiations in the spiritual path is so beautifully stated by Meister Eckhart, 14th century Christian mystic. And he says, I pray to God to rid me of God, that I may find God. I pray to God to rid me of God, that I may find God. And it is the belief that there is something out there that we always have to both lean into and somehow please. So my experience is that the first thing that comes with personal responsibility is fear and anger.
I got them both.
Yeah. So you're on the right track, right? And if we can then if we can then begin to imagine that we are teenagers leaving our parents' home. Remember that it was scary but freeing. Remember that there was a reason for leaving because you didn't fit in the box anymore, or you had a different idea, or you wanted to expand beyond that. And yeah, scary, but you decided to become your own person. This is the natural evolution of an individual human being. Spiritually, we go through that same evolution. And we have to leave our Father's house. And we have to go make our way in the world and take responsibility for the outcome of our choices. And those outcomes begin to educate us. So if we walk around in fear, we get nothing but fear back. If we walk around thinking everybody's trying to get us, well, guess what? Over and over and over again, we get ripped off. We have people who say they're going to do stuff and they don't. We have bosses that fire us for, faulty reasons or whatever. It's just the law playing out our beliefs, our expectations. As we begin to take responsibility for that, my experience is we begin to use the same process that made a mess to practice making good. That's the science part of the science of mind. We begin proving to ourselves that yes, we're responsible for the crappy stuff, but you know what? Every time something happens to us that is a good outcome, we get to take responsibility for that too. Right? So we don't have to pretend we didn't do it. We don't have to not brag. We don't have to not feel good about it, right? Because no. And we actually were responsible for that ourselves. So we'll grow in our experience of empowerment. That growth of empowerment will grow until we become exhausted. Because we're constantly having to be empowered, constantly having to have a good, thought, right? And then out of that comes an opening where we recognize that the trajectory of life itself is for our good. The trajectory of life itself is for our good. That's what it means. The universe is on our side. It is actively seeking to impress life upon us. And if that is the case, we begin to experience that everything we need isn't actually out there. It's already in here. And Ross, I promise you, if you will stay the course, I personally have experienced on the other side of all of that a deeper love than I can ever imagine, because I can never, ever, ever get outside of the presence of the one infinite reality. Ever get outside of it. So the minute that I breathe, that which is seeking to express itself as me, that trajectory of life is already always present. Nothing is withheld. Nothing. Nothing is withheld. And so the universe says yes to anything that I begin to choose. The good work I want to do in the world, the love I want to share, the work I want to do, the way in which I see my life unfolding, the universe is forever. That law is saying yes, yes. And it knows everything that's needed for that to happen. I don't have to worry about it. That gives me such a feeling of being loved without it being a parental figure. These are the initiations that we go through over a period of time. And so working with the law can feel very cold and like you're right on time and you're right where you need to be, right? And we're in this together to hold each other's hand as we go through these bumpy spots in the process of spiritually maturing. So thank you so much for sharing that and for saying that. I know you speak for a lot of people. And it is a part of the growing process, of the evolving process of our ability to live our spirituality. Okay, is it real quick? Because I've already gotten the wrap up. Can we get JL? Can we? Ryan's already like, we're wrapping it up.
Okay, I do want to say thank you for sharing that, because I left deflated that day too. Like, oh my God, I have to take responsibility for everything. But just like you said, which got me to the point of saying, I get to take responsibility for everything.
That's right.
And I have jumped over hurdles of stuff.
Yes. Yes.
And I'm responsible for that.
Yes.
And I can do it again.
Yes, you earned it and you deserved it by being you and by growing, and right, not because of somebody else or something, right? And that's the thing. Take responsibility for the but we also get to take responsibility for the other side. Beautiful. All right. So we're going to carry on. We did not get to the next chapter, Ryan, but we will. We'll carry on with the next chapter. Or actually the next section in this chapter next week. Have a wonderful Sunday. We'll see you in the celebration, or we'll see you next week. Bye for now.